Short history of Iran. It had a democracy in the 50s. The U.S. didn't like the deal it was getting with the oil, so it staged a coup or helped a coup and replaced this democratic leader with the Shah. And he was going along fine, I guess. You know, the U.S. and British oil companies got the deal that they wanted, but he was overthrown in 1979. And since then, the U.S. Wants to put someone else back in charge. And this is no secret, I think, to anyone, even the mainstream news. If you watch it, you'll get the idea. I mean, they're trotting out the Shah's son now, which is so beyond ridiculous that that guy could ever rule Iran. But I don't want to get into the weeds here. I want to make a main point here is that everything you hear about Iran through any major news outlet in the West follows the State Department UK line, which is that the rulers, the mullahs, are evil and religious fanatics, and that the people want them gone, and everybody else wants to help them so they can live in a democracy. And so that's the game. You have the evil mullahs, Iranian people who want them gone and can't do it on their own, and we need to help them. So anything that comes out of the Iranian government is BS or nonsense or is just fake. Anyway, so it's hard for me to talk about Iran because everything I'm about to say now, your brain is going to fight it, as my brain fights it. I say that the number one difficulty for me every day is trying to get rid of the propaganda in my head, because it's hard when something is repeated to you over and over and over again not to move in that direction. And so even I lately was thinking that what I was reading about Iran from the news was correct, even though, because I hadn't thought about it. And that's sort of the thing. If you're not really thinking about something very hard and somebody gives you an answer, you just accept an answer. I mean, that's just human psychology, right? And so I wasn't thinking about Iran. So I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, they're protesting on the streets and, the government won't change. And so people are getting killed and it's ridiculous. And I wasn't thinking, well, wait, is there maybe another alternate explanation? So an alternate explanation, and I'm not saying this is true, I'm just saying that it's an alternate explanation, is that once again, Israel and the United States has paid off these rabble-rousers in Iran to intermingle with these protests and to throw Molotov cocktails, burn down buildings, and kill people. And when the government comes in and sends people to kill these agitators, it looks like they're killing Iranian protesters when they're actually just killing thugs that have been paid from the far reaches of Iran to go to these small cities and create trouble. So they've turned off the internet and Starlink to prevent the handlers of these thugs, which are in Israel and the United States and whatever, to contact them to help them organize. So they're not cutting off the internet so Iranians can't speak to the West and talk about their plight or send videos of them getting shot. They're cutting off the internet to stop foreign intervention. So again, I'm sure in your mind you're resisting this. You're like, we wouldn't do this. We wouldn't. That's so dirty pool. That's so cheating. Like, we wouldn't do this. Even though, again, historically, we know we've done it many times. So I'm just going to put that out there. So, and I don't think it really makes a difference which narrative you think. But now let's think about Trump and his minions. they are not sophisticated thinkers. They are not. They're not going to parse this and push back on anything. So the forces in the U.S. government, the CIA, and Israel, let's just call these the America First, Israeli First Hawks, whatever you want to call them, they want to overthrow the government. They want to weaken Iran. But there are many agendas here. The agenda of Israel and the agenda of the United States is not the same. And this is something Tucker Carlson has been going over a lot recently. And he is, whether you agree or disagree with him, I disagree with a lot of things he's done in his career, for sure. Very much against them. But he's not a stupid man. And some of the things he says are correct. And even if you take propaganda, some things are correct. There are gray areas everywhere. Anyway, in my mind, I agree with others that Israel's only reason for being, the only reason it gets support from the United States, is to police the Middle East. If there's no oil in the Middle East, Israel wouldn't have any of the weapons that it has. It has the weapons because it wants power in the Middle East. It wants to be strong. It wants to push back its borders, keep all its neighbors weak. I get it, right? So that's what they want. And if it ever gets to the point where, let's say, the U.S., the U.S. did have a deal with Iran, as the U.S. formalizes its relationships with Iran, that's bad for Israel, because then Israel's like, well, if the U.S. has a good relationship with Iran, then what are they going to need us for? And they are correct in that. And so, of course, they want to stop that. And they would, a war, the U.S. at odds with Iran serves Israel's selfish interests, which again is fine by me, as long as we realize that that's what's going on. But I don't think anybody in this current administration thinks about any of this. So I think Trump honestly believes that these protests in Iran are from the Iranian population, and that if the U.S. just attacked Iran, that the mullahs are just about to topple, and if we just staged some more strikes, we got really tough and attacked Iran, that the mullahs would fall and the people would rise up and form a democracy. Forget about the fact that they already had a democracy in the 50s. This is stuff that, again, for people who follow geopolitics, is just entertaining. I can't even do it justice on entertaining. The irony, the hypocrisy is just... Anyway, humans. So he or Rubio or any of these guys, they know nothing about this. They're listening to the logic of these people that favor war with Iran for different reasons. The Americans have some reasons. The Israelis have some reasons. The UK might have some reasons. Whatever. So the question is, if U.S. attacks Iran in a real way, well, we already have. No, we really haven't. I'll explain that in a second. What would happen? Now, geopolitical analysts, including those at the CIA and the State Department, this is not there are various factions. The CIA is not all of one mind that, we need to, depose the mullahs and get somebody else new there. Everybody has different points of view. Or I guess I should say that even if everybody agreed that the mullahs need to go and they need a good government and that would be good for the United States or Israel, that doesn't mean you can do it. And this is the most dangerous thing that I've already made videos about with the United States, is that the government now believes it has all this power to change things in the world, and the public, who normally doesn't have an interest in geopolitics, is even at a new low of having no interest and, more importantly, no understanding of any of this whatsoever. So I guess what I'm saying is that the major media, not only is it wrong, but it wouldn't even make a difference because nobody's even paying attention. Anyway, so if my read of the situation, I have the dates up here, but basically about a year and a half ago, Israel took out some Iranian officials in Damascus, and it was in a diplomatic mission, and that is a no-no in the international order. So Iran said, okay, you did this. We're going to attack you with missiles for a day as retaliation. And what did the United States say? Okay, because it had to. This is, in the Biden administration, because Israel had broken a gentleman's agreement between all nations that you do not attack each other's diplomatic embassies or anything like that anywhere, wherever they are. And Israel did that. So basically, I wrote a Medium article about it where I call it that Iran got a penalty kick. So because Israel had done this, Iran gets a penalty kick, and they launch these missiles at Israel. And they mostly hit army bases, so it's really unknown what damage they did. But Israel basically said, we brushed it off. I did not agree with that. I did not agree that they brushed it off. I agree that damage was much bigger, but again, none of this gets out. And this is something I've been trying to tell people. I guess one of my missions is that anything military, there's no public right to know. We don't get any information about any of this stuff, and never have, and never will. The only time you'll get information from the government about what's going on in a military operation is if it's information that will ultimately get out no matter what, or it's already commonly known or assumed. Otherwise, nothing ever gets out. So, we don't know because we don't have people on those bases. Reporters aren't allowed within miles of those bases. So what happened? Did they hit nothing in the base? Did they knock out 4 F-35s? We don't know. Okay, now in the future we might know. Anyway, so Iran gets this penalty kick. And then Israel does something again, and Iran does another, day of missiles or whatever. And again, does it work? We don't know. But after the second one, the U.S. says, we're going to send you the THAAD missile system, the best missile system that the U.S. has at all. So now Israel has the best missile defenses, not only that they built, but our own. And then Israel gets into that 12-day missile war with Iran. And after 12 days, a ceasefire is agreed to. Why? Why would Israel agree to a ceasefire? If you're winning, why would you stop, right? If you're sending missiles to Iran and Iran is sending missiles to you, and you're knocking most of those missiles out, and your missiles are getting through, I think it's basically military one-on-one. Keep going. So you don't. So when does Israel ever back down? So I just want to make that clear that if you look at that simple fact, the simple fact that when Israel and Iran got into a missile pissing contest, that Israel agreed to quit, what does that tell you? So back to the current situation. If, for the sake of argument, that again the media is correct, all Iranians want to be free, the mullahs are horrible, all they need is for the U.S. to drop a couple of bombs on the mullah's mosque or residence or whatever, of some bunker busters, and take them out, that the Iranians will be free. Okay, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that's true. The problem with that is that the mullahs do not run the military. Just like here, just like everywhere. You have to separate domestic politics from geopolitics or the military. So the Iranian National Republican Guard, right, the IRGC, they have commanders and they run the military, And just like here, the mullahs give some edicts about you can do this or do that, like they've done an edict saying no nuclear bombs, right? So that's how it works. So even for the sake of argument, you took out the mullahs, and the government said, okay, we're going to have a democracy. Well, all right, so you've been bombed by the United States. Do you think the military of Iran is not going to respond in kind? That's the big question. So then you have to look at, okay, if we start this war with Iran, with the Iran military, forget about all the people, forget about the protests, forget about the mullahs. If we start a war with the Iranian military, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and what are our strengths and our weaknesses? And the number one thing that I believe has prevented the U.S. from getting into a real war with Iran. Let me just bring up when the B-52 bombers or B-1 bombers dropped the bombs on those nuclear sites. Iran was warned ahead of time. They knew they were going to hit those sites. They brought dump trucks and they covered up the holes so they could easily get back in after the bombs were dropped. Keep that in mind. Again, this is public knowledge. So could the Iranians knock out those B-1 bombers? We don't know. And I get into disagreements with people about this all the time when they say, oh yeah, they couldn't take them out. Yeah, we took out their nuclear facilities and nothing they could do. All right, I disagree. Okay, we don't know if they could have taken them out. Now, generally, no military will attack another military, and this is getting back to that penalty kick. So when Israel knocked out the embassy of Iran, and Iran got the free penalty kick, it could test its missiles against Israel and see what works and what doesn't work. That's the last thing you ever want as a military. You want a threat. You want the other guy to believe that your force is so overwhelming that if you use your little missile, you're going to blow them to smithereens. You do not want them to test any of those missiles, because if some of those missiles get through and you can't protect yourself, then you tell your adversary, hey, you're onto something. Just try a little harder next time and you might actually, blow up something real. So that's why you don't want anybody firing missiles at you to test how things are going. And again, all this is kept from us. So if the strength or the trump card, that Iran has always had against the United States is that the United States has many bases, American bases, in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, all over, UAE, whatever, right? They're all over. And those bases are there to protect U.S. interests in the Middle East, right? And so they work very well because they have the threat. And they tell Saudi Arabia, they tell whatever, that we're the strong guy. Nobody better mess with us or we're going to take them out. We have these bases. So Saudi Arabia, if you think of, getting rid of your monarchy and going democratic, well, we have some bases and we're not going to allow that, right? Because the bases are both, right, to protect Americans' interests from enemies like Iran, but also to keep in line those that we have relationships with, like Saudi Arabia. So because we have all these bases, and Iran has always worked on the missiles, so Iran has gone with what they have a strength in. So decades ago, they realized we're never going to get an air force that's powerful, right? So what is our best defense or offense? It's missiles, because there are those bases, and if we can take out those bases, then how's the U.S. going to fight us? Because we're a mountainous country. If they land the Marines here with all these mountains, they're going to get cut down, because this isn't just like an open desert like most of Iraq. So Iran has been working on these missiles for decades. And anybody who thinks the Persians are a stupid people are ignorant. They are a very clever. Other people have said this. Been around for a long time. In fact, when I went to college, the first couple of girls I met were Iranians, and they blew me away. how intelligent they were. Blew me away. And this is back in 1979, 1980. Anyway, so if the U.S. attacks Iran so these people can get the government that they want, even if they get the government that they want, the military arm of Iran is not going to allow Iran to be invaded by the United States. Because again, we're talking about two different things. Your domestic population, what the government they have and whatever, and who is running your country. So no government of Iran, even a democratic one, even anyone is going to allow other countries to invade it or to threaten to invade it. So Iran would have to take out those American bases because that's the natural thing you would do, right? If you're going to push back your power, you push back your borders, you're going to take out the bases, just like Israel does all the time. Israel does this all the time. Why doesn't Iran do it all the time? I'm not going to answer that question because I don't know. And I don't think it makes a difference what my opinion is. But I think the reason they don't is they're not stupid. Iran has never been stupid, in my opinion. And I think we can see this because since they kicked out the Shah, right? They took the U.S. plan and they turned it on its head, and they've been fine ever since. Now they are having problems with water and the currency and stuff like that, but countries are always having problems, and this is a problem all over the world. This is not specific to Iran. I don't believe it's specific to mismanagement in Iran. Not that there isn't mismanagement or anything. All these things are there, but these are just problems, and I do not believe they're at the scale of. Because think about it, when you look at even with the video you see from the major media in Iran on these protests, and you see these kids throwing Molotov cocktails, do you think those kids are going to lead to a better government? Do you think a bunch of 19-year-old thugs are the spearhead of a new government? No. It's just, even if you just look at it, even if you just buy into it, it's like, well, these people aren't going to get anywhere. It would only work if you said, oh, well, all Iranians are a bunch of idiots. They're just like these thugs. They're just knuckleheads. No. Sorry. Anyway. So if Iran takes out the U.S. bases with its missiles, which I believe it can do, but if it does, we don't know, right? If it does, what's the next step of the U.S.? What's it going to do next? Okay. Bomb Iran every day. So fine. Can the bombers get into Iran? Again, we don't know. You say, yeah, well, we got to be one bomber over. I say they knew it was coming and they let it bomb because they just wanted the U.S. to go away. So we don't know whether our planes can get into Iran. I don't believe when Israel attacked it that any of their aircraft got into Iran. They told us in the media, oh, they knocked out all their anti-aircraft and whatever. I saw no visual proof. I didn't see a single video taken by an Iranian of a U.S. fighter or Israel fighter in Iranian airspace. Not a single one. So that tells me it didn't happen. Because if it did happen, we'd see it. We see anything that shows an Israeli or American victory or success in Iran, and I have seen none of it. Yes, I've seen buildings destroyed in Iran, the prison, which is ridiculous, and stuff like that. But those are from local drones, I believe. They weren't from F-35s dropping missiles or anything like that. So, okay, Trump bombs Iran to free the people, which is, again, to me, a cockamamie story. Doesn't add up if you give it any thought. And then, okay, you get a government, and then how's the Iranian military going to respond? Do you think that, okay, Trump does this attack, the government is overthrown, and then they're like, okay, don't fight back, don't send any missiles because we've knocked out the government, and we want to be friends with the United States and Israel. We want to be friends with two countries that attack us all the time, often surprise attacks, right? The last attack in Israel, the big one, the day before Trump said, we're going to talk. Literally the day after he said, we're talking next week. We're going to talk on Friday. We're going to work this out. The next day, Israel attacked. Think about that. Like that, you're going to trust somebody that tells you, hey, listen, let's quit the hostilities for a bit. Let's talk in a week on Friday, and then the next day they attack you. Whatever any government that was going to take over Iran knows that, and many other things like that beside. So, where am I in this video? So 25 minutes. Wow, amazing. So where am I? What's my thing that if the United States attacks Iran in a real way, and Iran responds the way it's threatened to respond by taking out U.S. bases in the Middle East, World War III is game on. Thanks for watching.